Hello. Today, as you can see, I'll be doing a video of how to set up and play a Gest of Robin Hood. This game came out just recently, 2024 anyway. I got it a few weeks ago. Finally got a chance to play it yesterday, just solo by myself playing as it's a two-player game, so I've just played both sides to learn the rules. So, thought I'd do a video on it, so let's get started with how to set up. Alright, the first thing you'll do, as usual, is place the game board in the middle of the table between the two players. Each player is given a mat. The Robin Hood player will take the green mat. The player playing the Sheriff of Nottingham will take the rules call it a silver map. It's more grayish to me, but this mat. The Robin Hood player will get these 11 octagonal cylinders that have 10 of them have a feather on top. These are the Merry Men, and one has RH on the top, and that will be Robin Hood. The Robin Hood player will also get these 5 green discs with a deer on the top that they will indicate the Merry Men camps. The Sheriff player will get these 18 wedges. They call them silver. They're more like a light blue to me, but the rules call them silver wedges. Those are the Sheriff's henchmen. A folding screen is also provided to each player that can be used when they need to take an action that needs to be concealed. And it also displays some rules summaries and some reminders. So those are just used when necessary. The Sheriff player will place 2 henchmen in Nottingham. They will also place 1 henchman in the parish of Blythe. The parishes on the map are separated by rivers or brown lines. So this is the parish of Blythe. This is the parish of Redford. This is the parish of Tuxford. You got Newark here, Bingham here, Remston here, Mansfield here, Nottingham, and then a couple of wood spaces, Shirewood and Southwell Forest. Those are not parishes. You also have Allerton Hill, which no pieces can be placed in normally. There is an event card that may allow a use of that space, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, during setup, you'll place 1 henchman in Blythe. You'll also take these markers that have submissive or revolting, and you'll place 1 in Blythe, marking it as submissive. And that represents the attitude of the population of that parish. They're either submissive or they're revolting. And that's submissive to the Sheriff player. Okay, the Sheriff player will also place 1 henchman in Mansfield along with a submissive marker, or a marker on the submissive side. The parish of Bingham will also get 1 henchman and be submissive. Retford, Tuxford, and Newark all are placed in submissive state, but they get no henchmen. And I should mention that Nottingham is always considered to be submissive, so that's why it doesn't have a marker. It can't get changed to revolting like some of the other parishes can. Remston starts out on the revolting side, so the peasants in Remston are revolting. The Robin Hood player starts with 1 camp in the Shirewood. The Robin Hood player then takes the Robin Hood piece along with 3 Merrymen pieces, and they place them how they see fit in either of the 2 forest spaces or Remston, so they can distribute them how they like. And these pieces, when they are face up like that, they're revealed. So whenever the Robin Hood player places these pieces, he'll place them face down so that they are not revealed, so that the sheriff player doesn't know where Robin Hood is. So again, you get to place the Robin Hood and 3 merrymen distributed in the Shirewood, either of the 2 forest spaces or Remston, how they see fit. So we'll say we're going to put Robin Hood and a merryman there, maybe one in South Wolf Forest and one here in Remston. Again, the sheriff player doesn't know which of those is Robin Hood. The Robin Hood player places the remaining pieces of his forces in the available forces, and camps as well. The sheriff player will place his remaining forces here in the available forces box on his mat, like so. You then give the carriage tokens to the sheriff player. He'll have 2 tribute carriages that have this crown on them, 2 trap carriages that have this little shackle and an image of 2 henchmen, and then 2 tallage carriages that just show the icon for 5 shillings on all of them. So he'll take those and place them on his available carriages space on his player mat. He'll take your shillings tokens and place them nearby. You have these silver shillings that count as 1 shilling each, and these gold shillings that count as 3 shillings each. You'll start out giving 9 shillings to the sheriff, like so. And I will say the amount of shillings that a player has is always known, so you can't hide the shillings that you have behind your player screen. That always has to be shown so all players can see how many shillings other players have at all times. But the sheriff starts with 9, and the Robin Hood player starts with 5. And then just set the remaining shillings aside. You'll take this red cylinder, which is the Royal Favor cylinder, and put it on the silver 1 space of the Royal Favor track. The track shifts toward order for the sheriff player or toward justice for the Robin Hood player. Again, it starts on the 1 space of the on the silver order side. You then take the green eligibility cylinder for the Robin Hood player and place that here on the first eligible space, and you take the silver eligible cylinder and place it on the second eligible space. That's for the sheriff. Next, you'll take your green event deck. You'll separate out the 2 Royal Inspection cards from the event deck. You'll also separate the King Richard's Return card from the event deck. You'll also separate out the 5 Fortune cards. They have this Wheel of Fortune icon in the middle here, so you'll separate those 5 cards out as well. That will leave you with 24 event cards that haven't been separated out. You'll shuffle those up and form a deck. From that deck, you'll deal out 3 piles of 4 cards. 2, 3, and 4. So 3 piles of 4 cards. Take your 5 fortune events and shuffle those up and deal 1 onto each pile. These are my fortune events, dealing one onto each pile. Now you'll shuffle each of those piles individually to shuffle your fortune event into the pile. After those have been shuffled, you'll then deal 2 more regular event cards onto each pile. So that's 2 more onto each pile. You'll then put King Richard's Return on the bottom of one of those piles, and the Royal Inspection cards on the bottom of your other 2 piles. So you'll have 3 piles still, one with the Royal Inspection card on the bottom of each, and one with King Richard's Return on the bottom of the other. You'll then take one pile and place it on top of the King Richard's Return card that's on the bottom. Needs to be the bottom pile, so you'll place the other 2 piles or stacks of cards, forming an event deck of 24 cards. Your unused event cards and unused fortune cards will just go back in the box. Next, you'll take the brown Traveler deck and you'll separate out the Guy of Gisborne and Bishop of Hereford cards and just set them aside. They may come into play later in the game. The rest of your travel cards you'll shuffle up and form a deck, and then just set that somewhere nearby. You'll want to make sure you leave room for a discard pile and what's called a victims pile. So just a couple of areas near your traveler's deck where you may need to place cards. I just wanted to mention the game comes with these wooden pawn tokens, which you can use when you're doing your plots and deeds to mark the areas, your origin areas or destination areas, so you'll know which ones you've already done. If you need to use those as reminders, you don't need to use them, but they're available if you do. You'll need to place your 2 dice, green and a white dice, somewhere near the Robin Hood player. He'll use those when he does his rob plots. You'll also have a bridge token you need to place nearby, and that may come into play via an event card. My game did come with a few spare tokens and markers. I guess those are just in case you lose the other ones, but you won't need those and they can just go back in the box. Alright, so how do we play? Well, each turn or round we'll start with flipping an event card. It doesn't matter which player, the sheriff or the Robin Hood player, reveals the event card, but you'll reveal it. And the first thing you'll look at on this when this event card is revealed is up here, and that's like a picture of a carriage and a number, and that depicts how many carriages that the sheriff must move if he's got carriages on the board. So if he had 2 or more carriages on the board, he would have to move 2 of them. Now when you move them, you just move them one to one adjacent space. Of course, if he only had 1 carriage on the board, he would only be able to move 1, and like at the beginning of the game where he's got no carriages on the board, he would move none. But let me just put a couple carriages on the board as an example so I can show you how they move. So I've placed 1 carriage token here in Remston and 1 here in Blythe. And we'll talk later about how these carriages get placed on the board. But for example, I just want to show you how they move, since that's the first thing you do in a turn when you reveal the event card. So this one says move 2 carriages. And so I've just placed 2 carriages. Again, if you had none, you couldn't move any. If you just had 1, you would just move 1. But when you move a carriage, they move along these roads here. And they always have to move 1 space to 1 adjacent space that is closer to Nottingham. So they're eventually trying to get to Nottingham. So if this card was revealed that shows to move 2 carriages, the sheriff would move this carriage over here to Mansfield from Remston. Again, he wouldn't move this way because he's trying to move closer to Nottingham. So he would move it from this parish to this parish, and this one up here in Blythe would move along this road to Tuxford. So they're trying to get the carriages to Nottingham. But for instance, if this carriage was here in Mansfield and you flipped an event card and it said to move, one or two carriages, even though Nottingham is adjacent to Mansfield, you could not move it directly to Nottingham. It has to move along the road. So it would first have to move here to the Shire Wood, and then the next time you move carriages, you could move to Nottingham. If you do end up moving a carriage into Nottingham, then you reveal it, and the sheriff will get a variable reward depending on what is shown after you flip the carriage over, what's shown. So for instance, this one would give the sheriff 2 shillings. The 2 shillings are depicted there. And then normally the sheriff gets to shift the royal favor marker 1 space towards order whenever he gets a carriage to Nottingham, but this one allows him to move it 1 extra, shift it 1 extra, so he would get to shift 2 spaces if he got this carriage into Nottingham. If the sheriff was able to move this carriage into Nottingham and revealed it, well, you can see then he would get 5 shillings. Besides getting the 5 shillings, he would also get to shift 1 towards order on the royal favor track. And if the sheriff is able to move a carriage with this icon on it, he gets 2 shillings as depicted here. Now you'll see there's also an image of a shackle and 2 henchmen on there. That comes into play if the Robin Hood player tries to rob that carriage. And we'll get to that later in the game when we're talking about the Robin Hood player's possible plots and deeds. Now, I should mention that when you are moving a carriage, if there is a henchman, 1 or more henchmen in the space, the province, or the space with that carriage, and you move it, you can bring 1 henchman with it. So again, the first thing you'll do on a turn is reveal an event card, the top event card. First thing you'll look at is this icon here. It will show a number of carriages, 0, 1, or 2, that the sheriff must move. Now again, that's not the number of spaces the sheriff moves a carriage. That's the number of carriages the sheriff must move if he has that many on the board. If not, if he just has 1, he just moves 1. If he has none, obviously he can't move any. Right, so that's all you do at that point. You don't have to do anything with what the event card says right here. So next, you move on to see the first eligible player. Now at the beginning of the game, Robin Hood player is the first eligible player, and he will get to choose one of these 3 actions. So the possible actions are single plot, event, and plots and deeds. So we'll start with the event. If a player selects the event action, then they will choose the appropriate box to resolve here. Now, I'm going to state at this point that in the rulebook that came with the game, it says the player can choose either one of these options, the light shaded or the dark shaded option, to resolve if they choose the event action. Now, they do state that the light shaded action usually favors Robin Hood, and the dark shaded action usually favors the sheriff, but in the rules it says the player can choose either one. In the FAQ that's published on the GMT, the publisher's website, it now says that the Robin Hood player can only choose the light shaded option and the sheriff can only choose the dark shaded option. Or I think they say the shaded and unshaded. But in either way, we'll play it with the way the FAQ is now. So if the Robin Hood player chooses the event, then he would read and resolve whatever the light shaded or unshaded text is here. So in this one it says, set a parish without a henchman to revolting and shift one step toward justice. So if the Robin Hood player chose that, he would get to choose one of the parish that are submissive, that doesn't have a henchman. So Newark or Tuxford or Retford. They couldn't choose Mansfield because it does have a henchman. They couldn't choose Bingham because it has a henchman. So a parish without a henchman, they could shift it to revolting and then shift one step towards justice. So with these event cards, you just, whichever player you are, Robin Hood or the sheriff, if you choose event, then you read the text in the box that corresponds to you and do exactly what it says. Okay, after the first eligible player has chosen their action and resolved it, then the second eligible player gets to choose one of the remaining actions. So the sheriff, if the Robin Hood player chose the event and resolved their section of the event card, then that would leave only the single plot or plots and deeds action for the sheriff player to choose. They could not choose the one that's already been chosen by the Robin Hood player. And actually, each player has one other option they could choose, and that's written here, and that's they can pass. They still choose a box, so if the first eligible player, Robin Hood, chose to pass, he still has to choose one box, blocking the other player from choosing it. But he can pass and not take any action and instead take a number of shillings. Now the Robin Hood players, you can see, if passing, just takes 1 shilling. So no matter which action box they place their eligibility marker in, they only get to take 1 shilling when they pass. However, the sheriff, if he passes, he gets to take the amount of shillings depicted in the box. So for instance, if the sheriff went here and said, I'm passing, so they don't do a plots or deeds, but they would get to take 3 shillings. Whereas if they went here, they would just get to take 1 shilling. Now, after both players, so maybe Robin Hood player went here, sheriff went here. After both players have chosen an action and resolved it, then you'll end up resetting eligibility. The marker on the leftmost initiative box gets to take the first eligible position for the next turn, and the marker on the rightmost takes the second eligible. So if the Robin Hood player had gone here and the sheriff had taken the single plot, then they would, for the beginning of the next turn, be first eligible, and the Robin Hood player would be second eligible. But let's go back and say, the Robin Hood player that was first eligible chose to do the event, and the sheriff then chooses to do plots and deeds. So that allows the sheriff to do 1 plot from their mat and 1 deed from their mat. They have to do the plot first, followed by the deed. So let's talk about the available plots and deeds for the sheriff. So the first plot, and it gives a summary of what you can do when you choose this plot, and even a little section in the rules to reference where in the rules if you want more detail than what's just placed here. But as you can see, one of the plots that the sheriff can do is hire. Alright, you'll see for hire it costs up to 2 shillings per space, and you can do it in up to 3 spaces. Now that's when you're doing the plots and deeds action. If you chose the single plot action, then you can still choose 1 plot, but instead of doing it in up to 3 spaces like these other plots allow you to do, you can only do it in 1 space. And then in the plots and deeds, you get to choose 1 plot and do it in up to 3 spaces, and then you get to choose 1 deed, where if you just do the single plot action, you don't get to do a deed. You choose 1 plot and you can only do it in 1 space. But otherwise, these are the these are the same, as far as how the plots actually work. So again, back to the higher plot. Costs 2 shillings per space, and you can do it up to three spaces. So each space you do it in will cost you 2 shillings. When you pay, you take 2 shillings from the sheriff and place it back in the general supply. So one of the things you can do with the hire for 2 shillings is you can place up to 2 henchmen in submissive parishes. So he could take 2 henchmen from his available forces and place them in any parish that is submissive. All right, another option you have, again for the same cost of 2 shillings when you do hire, is you can place up to 4 henchmen in Nottingham. So you could take 4 henchmen from your available forces and place them in Nottingham. Or finally, you can, when you're doing the hire, you can set a revolting parish, for instance, like Remston here. If it has more henchmen than merry men, like in this case, now I just set these henchmen in here to show this as an example, but if you have more henchmen than merry men, and it's a revolting province, for 2 shillings you can set it to submissive. But then you don't get to place any henchmen in there. So with the hire, you can either place 2 henchmen in a submissive parish, or you can place up to 4 henchmen in Nottingham, or without placing any henchmen, you can set a revolting parish to submissive if there are already more henchmen in there than merry men. And again, that's 2 shillings for each one of those you do, and you can choose amongst those. So you could choose to do any or all of those in 1 to 3 parishes. So if you had 3 parishes that you wanted to place 2 henchmen in, 3 submissive parishes that you wanted to place 2 henchmen in, then as long as they're different parishes, then you could do that. Again, 2 shillings each. Or if you had 3 revolting parishes that had more henchmen than merry men, you could, for 2 shillings for each space, you could do that. Of course, Nottingham, you can only do one of these actions or plots, one of these plots, in a space one time. So you couldn't do the 2 shillings and put 4 henchmen in Nottingham, and then do another 2 shillings and place another 4 henchmen in Nottingham. So when it says in up to 3 spaces, it's 3 different spaces, and then you can do one of those things in each of those spaces, but you can't do something in one space twice. I hope that makes sense. So that is the hire plot. And again, you don't have to do 3 spaces. If you only had 4 shillings and you only wanted to do 2, you just can do 2 spaces. So again, it's up to 3 spaces. All right, let's look at one of the sheriff's other plots that he could choose from, patrol. And you can see it costs 2 shillings per destination. 2 shillings per destination. And as long as he's doing it from the plots and deeds space, he can do it in up to 3 destination spaces. Up to 3 destination spaces. If he was doing it from the single plot, he could only do it in 1 destination. So let's see how that works. So the sheriff can choose up to 3 destination spaces, but he has to pay 2 shillings per space he chooses, and then he can move in from spaces that are adjacent to that destination space any number of henchmen, and then reveal merry men for each henchman there. So for instance, if one of the destination places they chose here was Remston, they could move from an adjacent space. They could move this henchman into Remston, and now for each merryman there, or for each henchman there, they can reveal a merryman, so they could choose to reveal this merryman. Since that's only one destination space, they could choose another destination space, because they can do up to 3. Again, they have to pay 2 shillings for each one, and move in any number of henchmen from adjacent spaces. So maybe they could move these 2 from Blythe and this one from Mansfield. And then in forests, though, they can only reveal 1 merryman per 2 henchmen there. So in this case, they would only be able to reveal 1 merryman, even though they've got 3 henchmen in there. You can only, in a forest space, you can only reveal 1 merryman per 2 henchmen there. So he could choose one of these and reveal it. And lo and behold, he found Robin Hood. Right, and then he still has one other destination space. So maybe he would want to move these 2 henchmen from Nottingham. That would give him 2 in a forest, which is enough to reveal 1 merryman, so then he could reveal that one. And I will also mention that you can choose a destination space and not move any merrymen in there at all, and still reveal a merryman if you have a henchman there. So you don't have to move men in there in the destination space to reveal a merryman if you have a henchman, but you do still have to pay the 2 shillings if you choose that space to do that, and that does count as one of your 3. So you get up to 3, where you can move your henchmen, choose a space, move henchmen from adjacent spaces into that if needed, or if it already has a henchman and you can reveal, you can do that. So I think that covers the patrol. And that brings us to the sheriff's final plot, which is capture, and you can do that in up to 3 spaces with henchmen. So when you're performing the capture, again, you can do it in up to 3 spaces if you're doing it from plots and deeds. And what you can do there is choose a space and remove 1 revealed enemy piece, so it has to be revealed. So that's where, patrolling, the patrol plot that allows you to reveal merrymen is helpful, because you can only capture revealed merrymen. So again, with capture, you can remove 1 revealed enemy piece per henchman in the space. So for instance here, since we have 1 henchman and 1 revealed enemy piece, we could capture them, and when you capture a merryman, they go up here to the prison space. Up here in Shirewood, we can remove 1 revealed enemy piece per henchman there. Now, even though we've got 2 henchmen, we've only got 1 revealed enemy piece here, so we could only remove the 1 merryman to prison. Even though we've got 2 henchmen, we can't remove the other one because it's not revealed. And one difference here, in revolting provinces, you can remove 1 revealed enemy piece per 2 henchmen here in a revolting space. So right now, the way this parish is, even though we've got 1 henchman and 1 revealed merryman, we couldn't remove them because it's revolting. We would have to have at least 2 merrymen there. So in a revolting parish or revolting space, well, only the parishes can be revolting, you can only remove 1 merryman per 2 henchmen there. Now let's look at this example. If we were doing a capture here, in a forest, you can remove 1 merryman for each henchman there, and you'll notice we have Robin Hood there. Well, Robin Hood can't be taken until all the other revealed merrymen there are taken. So in this case, we have 2 henchmen. We can remove 2 enemy pieces but we can't take Robin Hood until all the other merrymen, revealed merrymen there, have been captured. So we couldn't get Robin Hood here. We would have to just take these two merrymen, send them to prison, and Robin Hood would stay. But if we only had one revealed merryman and Robin Hood and then two henchmen, we would take both Robin Hood and the merryman and put them in prison. And whenever the sheriff captures Robin Hood, he gets to shift one space toward order on the royal favor track. If we had this example where we've got three henchmen and only two revealed merrymen, Robin Hood and this merryman, well, Robin Hood and the merryman could be captured and removed to prison, which would shift, because they got Robin Hood, would shift one toward order. Even though we have another henchman, we couldn't capture this merryman because he's not revealed. And we could also not capture the camp because the camp can't be captured unless all merrymen in that space are removed. This one can't be removed because it's hidden, so we wouldn't be able to capture that camp. Alternatively, if we had this set up where we've got three henchmen, two of them could be used to capture these revealed merrymen, one being Robin Hood would shift toward favor. We still have another henchman which could now capture the camp because there's no other merrymen there. So the camp would be able to be captured. That just goes back to available forces. But capturing a camp does shift royal favor one space towards order. Alright, so that's how capture works. Again, it doesn't cost any shillings to do that like the other two plots, and you can do it in up to 3 spaces with henchmen. So that one covers that. So that's all the possible plots that the sheriff player can do. But when doing plots and deeds action, they get to choose one plot and do it in up to 3 spaces, but then they also get to choose a deed. So let's talk about the possible deeds the sheriff player has. Alright, the first deed for the sheriff is ride. This is a very simple one. It costs nothing. You can move up to 4 horsemen, or sorry, 4 henchmen from Nottingham to any one parish. So it doesn't have to be adjacent. It can be any one parish. So they could take 1, 2, 3, or up to 4 henchmen from Nottingham and move them all the way up here to Retford if they wanted to. But they all have to go together to the same parish. So basically, you can take up to 4 henchmen from Nottingham and move them to any parish. Now, you can't move them to the forest. Those are not parishes, but to any one parish. So that's it. That's pretty simple for ride. Alright, another deed the sheriff can choose is confiscate. It costs 0 shillings, and you can do it in up to 2 submissive parishes with henchmen. And this is how carriages get placed, by taking the confiscate deed. So to reiterate, you can take 2, or you can do in up to 2 submissive parishes, but it has to be submissive parish with henchmen in it. And if you do that, then you can take one of your available carriages. The sheriff would choose one of their carriages, secretly, depending on which one they want to put out there, and then they put it in a submissive parish with henchmen, so they could put one here. Now the trick is, after you place the carriage there, you then switch the parish to revolting. So I guess this is representing you are confiscating goods from the people in that parish to put them on the carriage to try to get them to Nottingham to the sheriff. And of course that makes the peasants not too happy, so they go into revolting. So you can do that again in up to 2 parishes where you have a henchman, 2 submissive parishes where you have a henchman. So he could try, maybe he wants to try to trap the Robin Hood player if he tries to, because the Robin Hood player can try to rob these carriages, and we'll talk about that later. So if you place a trap carriage, the sheriff gets less money if it actually gets to Nottingham, but if the Robin Hood player tries to rob it, then he's in for a little surprise. So then we would have to set this one to revolting. So that's it for confiscate. In up to 2 submissive parishes with henchmen, you can place an available carriage. And I don't think I mentioned this when I was talking about how carriages move earlier, but if a carriage does get to Nottingham and revealed, and the sheriff gets whatever reward from that, those carriages then go into the used carriages box, so they're not available for the sheriff to place until we get to the royal inspection part of the round, and we'll talk about that later, but I did want to mention that. Alright, the final deed for the sheriff is the disperse deed. It costs 3 shillings, and you can do it in 1 parish with henchmen. So you can do it in 1 parish. It doesn't matter whether it is submissive or revolting, as long as it's got a henchman there. And you can remove up to 2 enemy pieces there, even if they're hidden. So if the sheriff decided to do a disperse here, because he's got a henchman there, he can remove up to 2 enemy pieces there, even if hidden. But these do not go to prison. It's just like they've been run off, so they actually go back to Robin Hood's available forces. If there was a merry man and a camp there, and the sheriff did disperse, well, he would get to remove 2 enemy spaces, so he would get to remove this merry man and this camp and remove them to the available forces. And because he's removed a camp, that shifts the royal favor 1 step toward order. But camps have to be chosen last, so if there were 2 merry men in there, you only get to remove 2 pieces, so you would have to choose the merry men. You couldn't choose 1 merry man and the camp, so the camps are always last to be removed. So in this case, if he did the disperse, he could only disperse the 2 merry men. He couldn't get rid of the camp. Alright, and that pretty much covers all of the sheriff's possible plots and deeds. So we should talk now about Robin Hood's available plots and deeds. So the first plot available to Robin Hood is recruit. So if the recruit is being done from the plots and deeds action, then you can do it in up to 3 non-submissive spaces. So that would be either a revolting parish or a forest, because forests are obviously non-submissive. You couldn't do it in a submissive space or Nottingham, because Nottingham is always submissive. So, like I just said, if you're doing that from plots and deeds, you can do it in up to 3 non-submissive spaces. If you're just doing it from the single plot, then you could only do it in 1 non-submissive space. But then once you've chosen, either your 1 or up to 3 spaces if you're doing it from plots and deeds, and actually you don't have to choose them all at the same time. You can choose 1 and recruit there, and then choose another one and recruit there, however you want to do it. But anyway, in up to 3 non-submissive spaces. So what you can do if you're the Robin Hood player is you can place 1 merry man in a non-submissive space, and whenever you place merry men, you can place them or you place them hidden. So this is a non-submissive space. You could place 1 there. Cost 1 shilling per space, so that would cost 1 shilling. You could place 1 here in a forest, because that's a non-submissive space. Now you can place Robin Hood this way, because he's considered a merry man, so whenever something refers to a merry man, in most cases, you can count Robin Hood. So you could place Robin Hood in a non-submissive space as well. So 3 spaces, that would cost 3 shillings. Now, another thing you can do, instead of placing a merry man in a non-submissive space, you can replace a merry man, but in this case, not Robin Hood. I just mentioned that in most cases, if something refers to a merry man, like place a merry man or move a merry man, you can always also do Robin Hood. But in this case, you can replace a merry man, but not Robin Hood, with a camp. So if you do that, you place the camp and replace the merry man, just put them back in your available forces. And of course, that would then shift you one space towards justice. Whenever you place a camp, you shift one space towards justice. Or instead, if there's a space, a non-submissive space with a camp already, you can place two merry men there. So, one more time, when you're doing the recruit plot, in up to 3 non-submissive spaces, you can either place one merry man there, or you can replace a merry man there and place a camp, but you can't replace Robin Hood to place the camp. And if you get the camp, you move one space on the royal favor tack towards justice, or in a space, non-submissive space that already has a camp, you can instead place up to 2 merry men there. Or one other thing, which I almost forgot, when you're doing recruit, in a non-submissive space with a camp, instead of placing 2 merry men there, you can instead hide all revealed merry men in that space with the camp. So that's one additional thing you could do with the recruit. But if you do that, then you can't place the merry men there. So in a space with a camp, you can either place 2 merry men, or you can hide all merry men in that space with the camp. All right, I think that covers recruit. All right, the next possible plot for Robin Hood is sneak. That costs 1 shilling per origin space. So if you choose sneak from plots and deeds, then you can do it in up to 3 origin spaces with merry men. If you're doing it with just single plot, then you can only do it from 1 origin space with merry men. But what you can do is, if you choose sneak, you choose, again, if you're doing it from plots and deeds, you can choose up to 3 origin spaces, so that's spaces that currently contain merry men, and then you can move them to adjacent spaces. So, and again, it's 1 shilling per origin space. So if you chose the Shire Wood here as one of your origin spaces, you could move merry men to adjacent spaces and then hide them. Now, an exception to that is if you move merry men into a submissive space and the number of henchmen plus merry men that you just moved there exceeds 3, then you have to reveal them. Now here, we didn't exceed 3, so this one could move to hidden. But if we tried to move another merry man like this one into that space as our, another origin area, because now the number of moving merry men plus henchmen there would exceed 3, this guy would have to get flipped to revealed. So that's a way you can hide merry men that have been revealed. You can choose the sneak. Again, you can choose up to 3 origin areas that have merry men, and then you can move the merry men in those. Or now it's not the number of pieces. If there was 3 merry men here and this is an origin area, you can move all of those pieces. So you can move this guy here because the number of merry men plus henchmen doesn't exceed 3, then they would get to move to hidden. Same with this one, still don't exceed 3, so you can move to hidden. Now if we move this one, if we moved this one in there, he would have to be revealed because it would be it would exceed 3, the number of merrymen plus henchmen in there. So if you wanted to move this one, maybe you would move it over here and you could remain hidden. So that's the way sneak works. You can choose up to 3 origin spaces that have merrymen and move those merrymen in those spaces into adjacent spaces. If the destination space is submissive and the moving merryman plus the number of henchmen exceeds 3, those people have to be revealed, those merrymen have to be revealed. Otherwise, you can hide the merrymen after they've moved. Well, actually, you want to hide them before you move so the sheriff doesn't know which one is which. Like if Robin Hood, in this case, you could move Robin Hood as a merryman, and if you didn't want the sheriff to know which is which, you can tell him to look away while you flip those over and mix them up, and then move them so he doesn't know which one is Robin Hood. And just to mention, if you chose this space as an origin area and chose to sneak with Robin Hood and this other merryman, so you flipped them over and moved them here, any merryman that remains in an origin space and doesn't move does not get to change their orientation. They either remain revealed or hidden, depending on what they were. So if they don't actually sneak, they don't get to change to hidden. All right, and that covers sneak. All right, the third and final plot that the Robin Hood player has is the rob plot. Costs 0 shillings, and you can do it in up to 3 spaces with hidden merryman or Robin Hood. So the merrymen have to be hidden. Robin Hood could be hidden or not. So when you choose to rob, again, if you do that from the plots and deeds space, you can do that in up to 3 spaces. Again, as I just mentioned, with hidden merrymen or Robin Hood, whether he's hidden or not. If you do it from the single plot, then you can only do it in 1 space. So there's several possible things that you can rob. If you have merrymen, hidden merrymen in a parish with a carriage, you can attempt to rob that carriage. So the first thing you'll do if you're going to rob a carriage is reveal a number of merrymen in that space that are going to participate in the robbery. So in this case, if we were going to use both these merrymen to try to rob this carriage, we would reveal them both. If you don't reveal them, they can't participate in the robbery. In this case, we revealed Merryman and Robin Hood. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Robin Hood is the exception. If he was already revealed, he could still participate. But otherwise, merrymen can't participate if they are already revealed. They have to be revealed to participate in the robbery. In this case, we already have our target. We know it is the carriage, so we will flip it over. And we see that it's a carriage carrying, it's a tallage carriage, which if we successfully rob it, we'll get 5 shillings. Then we determine which die we get to roll. If we were robbing in a forest or a revolting parish, we would get to roll the green die, which has better numbers for Robin Hood. Unfortunately, in this case, we're robbing in a submissive parish, so we have to roll the white die. You would also roll the white die if the parish was passive. There's a way that this marker can be removed and then it's neither submissive or revolting and it's passive. But if you're robbing in a passive parish, you still roll the white die. So we would roll the die, see what we get. A -1. If the total of your die plus the number of just revealed merrymen or Robin Hood, even if he was already revealed, is greater than the defense of the target plus any henchmen that are in that parish, then your robbery is a success. Now, a tallage carriage has a defense of 0, but there is 1 henchman in there, So we got a -1, so our total is 1 against the henchman, one henchman, which is 1. So our total is not greater, so this robbery would be a failure. Now, when you fail attempting to rob a tallage carriage, then there's no effect for the failure. The carriage just stays. It stays revealed since everybody knows what it is, but the carriage still stays and can move when the event cards are rolled. But there's no other effect. No merrymen are moved to jail or anything like that. So the effect of that failure would just be we don't get the 5 shillings. If we had been successful, we would collect 5 shillings and then move this to the used carriages. If you attempt to rob a tribute carriage that looks like this and you're successful, it still has a defense of 0. The only other defenses would be the number of henchmen in there. But if you're successful, you get 2 shillings and you get to shift the royal favor 1 towards justice. If you fail, there's no effect. Carriage just still stays revealed like it is. Again, if you're successful, that would also get moved to the used carriages. If you reveal a trap carriage when you're attempting to rob, it adds 2 to the defense value because it's got like 2 henchmen pictured on there. So the defense value here would be 2 plus 1 because the henchman would be 3. So you'd have to get a pretty good roll in this case to be better than 3. You'd have to get a +2 on this die, and that would give you a total of 4, which would be greater than 3. But there's only 1 +2 on that die, so not very good odds of successfully robbing in that space. But if you were successful in robbing that trap carriage, you would get 2 shillings, and this would go to the used carriages. If you failed, then the carriage just stays there and will still continue to, it'll stay revealed, but it'll continue to move like a carriage towards Nottingham. But anybody that tried to rob the carriage and failed will be captured. So in this case, since Robin Hood was involved, he and this other merryman would be moved to prison, and because the sheriff captured Robin Hood, he would get to shift 1 space towards order on the royal favor track. And I will mention that if there had been merrymen in this space that were already revealed prior to the rob attempt, they would not have been involved in the robbery, so they would not be captured if this was a failed robbery attempt. All right, well, that's when you're attempting to rob carriages. There's a couple of other things to rob. In any space, if you have hidden merrymen, you can attempt to rob a traveler. So to do that, again, first thing, maybe if these merrymen here in Southwell Forest are going to try to rob a traveler, first you'll reveal any merrymen that are going to be involved in the robbery. So if you want both of these merrymen to be involved in the robbery, you would reveal both of them. Any previously revealed merrymen can't be involved in the robbery. All right, next you'll select your target. So if you're doing a traveler, you'll draw the top card from the traveler deck. You'll look at the traveler and choose one of the options before you make your roll attempt. First, this traveler has a defense value of 1, so that would be added to any number of henchmen that were in the space. In this case, there's no henchmen to add to the defense value, so it has a total defense value of 1. And then you choose one of the options. So if you choose this option, if successful, you'll gain 2 shillings and put the card in the discard pile. If failed, put the card in the discard pile. So that's a little safer. Nothing bad happens if you fail, but you only get 2 shillings. If you choose this option, if successful, you gain 4 shillings and put the card in the victim's pile. If failed, the sheriff gains 2 shillings and put the card in the discard pile. So you can see there's different results depending on which option you choose. So first you'll select which one, either the safer one or maybe but gives you less shillings if you're successful, or maybe the option that gives you more shillings if you're successful, but has a worse outcome if you fail. So we'll say in this case they're going to choose the unshaded or light shaded option. So then they attempt their robbery. Because they're robbing in a forest, they get to roll the green die, and they'll add that to their 2. So they got a +3, so they got a total of 5 against a defense of 1, so they're successful. So in this case, they would gain 2 shillings and put the card in the discard pile. So remember I said you'd leave room for a discard pile and a victim's pile. So if you were making the discard pile, he would just stay there. And then you would gain 2 shillings from the reserve there. So that's the way you attempt to rob a traveler. And you can do that in any space. You can just choose what your target's going to be, a traveler. Even if you were in a space with a carriage, you could choose to either rob a traveler or the carriage. You don't have to choose the carriage. And finally, one of the spaces you can choose to attempt to rob, if you have unrevealed merrymen in Nottingham, you can attempt to rob the treasury. So you would reveal any number of merrymen that you want to participate in that robbery attempt, and it would work just like robbing something else. You would choose, because it's in Nottingham, you would roll the white die and add the total of your die result to the number of participating merrymen against the defense of Nottingham, which would be the number of henchmen in there. If your result exceeds the defense value, then you're successful. If you're successful in robbing the treasury in Nottingham, you get 2 shillings, but not from the supply. You get them from the sheriff player. And you also shift 1 towards justice. So it's, pretty good outcome there if you're successful in robbing the treasury of Nottingham. If you fail, there's no other effect other than you fail and you've revealed 2 of your merrymen, but you don't get captured or anything. Alright, so that is the rob plot. Alright, well, we've covered all the Robin Hood plots. Let's move on to the deeds. Remember, if you do the plots and deeds, you get to do 1 plot and 1 deed. So let's look at the first Robin Hood deed. Turncoat just cost 1 shilling. This one's very simple. In 1 revolting parish with a merryman, replace 1 henchman with a merryman. So for example, in the parish of Remston, it's revolting with a merryman. So if we did the turncoat, we could remove this henchman. It would just go back to the sheriff's available forces, and we would get to place a merryman hidden in that spot where the henchman was. So that one's quick and easy, and remember, it does cost 1 shilling to do that. And you can only do that in 1 revolting parish. Alright, let's look at the next deed. Donate. 2 shillings per parish. You can do it in up to 2 submissive parishes. So you can do it in 2 parishes that are submissive. And what you'll do, if you're going to do it in 2 parishes, it costs 2 shillings per parish, so it would be a total of 4 shillings. But you could do it in just 1 parish and it only cost 1 shilling. 2 shillings for that 1 parish. But in the submissive parish, you choose, as long as you have merrymen equal to or greater than the number of henchmen there. So like in this case, if you chose this parish, we do have merrymen equal to or greater. We've got 2 merrymen, there's only 1 henchman. Then you can set that parish to revolting. And again, you could do that here because the number of merrymen in that parish is equal to the number of henchmen. So for 2 shillings, you could set that parish to revolting. It doesn't matter if the merrymen are hidden or revealed, as long as the number of merrymen is equal to or greater than the number of henchmen, then you can set that parish to revolting. All right, well, that is donate. All right, another deed that the Robin Hood player has is swashbuckle, and this costs 0 shillings. Just has to have one space with Robin Hood. So, for example, Robin Hood is in this space, Mansfield. So the swashbuckle deed allows you to move Robin Hood and up to one merry man in the same space as Robin Hood to any adjacent spaces. And they can both go to the same space or they can go to different spaces. For instance, Robin Hood could go into Nottingham and this merry man could cross the bridge. Normally, rivers make spaces not adjacent, so Bingham is not adjacent to Newark. But if there's a bridge, then you can cross it. And as I mentioned, there is an event that allows you to place a bridge which would make spaces adjacent. But I've gotten off topic here. Let's go back to our swashbuckle. It allows you to move Robin Hood and up to one merry man in the same space to adjacent spaces. Again, they can go to the same adjacent space or different adjacent spaces, and then you can hide them. So this is a good way, if Robin Hood has been revealed, to move him and hide him. The other option with swashbuckle is if Robin Hood happened to be in prison, like he is here, you can move him out of prison and place him in Nottingham or an adjacent space, but he remains revealed. Alright, that covers swashbuckle. That's a quick and easy one. And our final Robin Hood deed is inspire. Inspire costs 0 shillings and just has to be one parish with a hidden Robin Hood. So, in this case, if Robin Hood was in this parish hidden, this is him here, if he's hidden, you can do the inspire deed and reveal Robin Hood, and that allows you to set this parish to revolting. Or if Robin Hood is already in a revolting parish and he's hidden, you can reveal Robin Hood in that revolting parish to shift the royal favor up 1 towards justice. And that now covers all of Robin Hood's deeds. So let's get back to the sequence of play. First thing you'll do at the beginning of a turn or round is reveal an event card. If it shows a number of carriages there, you'll move that number of carriages if you have them on the board, or the sheriff will, moving them on the paths towards Nottingham. Then the player in the first eligible spot will choose to either do plots or deeds or event or single plot, as we've discussed, and the player in the second eligible will take one of the other options. Then you'll reset with the player in the leftmost action box will be first eligible, and the person further to the right will be second eligible, and then you'll reveal another card. And you'll continue to play like that until one of the event cards, if you'll remember, we placed in there was a fortune event. When you reveal a fortune event and it has this wheel of fortune, it will usually not move carriages, though I think there's one that can move one carriage, but most of them will have a 0 and won't move any carriages. And then it'll have some effect that you'll read out and do whatever it says, but players will not take actions when you reveal a fortune event. You'll just do what that event says, and then you'll move on to revealing the next event card. If you'll remember, during setup when we were setting up the event deck, we ended up placing 2 Royal Inspection event cards. When you reveal a Royal Inspection event card, as it says here, you immediately conduct a Royal Inspection round and then continue play. So when you reveal that card, you do a Royal Inspection round, And you can use this marker to go through the different steps of the royal inspection. As you can see, the first step is unrest. These steps are listed here on this player screen as a reference. So in the unrest step, you'll check the number of submissive parishes on the board. In the case we have right now, we've got 3 that are submissive. Nottingham does not count, even though it's always submissive. In the unrest phase, it does not count toward your submissive parishes. So in this case, we got 3. But depending on the number of submissive parishes, if you had 5 to 7 submissive parishes, you would shift 1 space towards order. If you have 3 to 4 submissive parishes like we have here, we've got 3, you shift 1 space towards justice. If you only had 1 or 2 submissive parishes, you would shift 2 spaces towards justice. And if you had 0 submissive parishes, you would shift 3 spaces towards justice. If after completing that, the royal favor marker is either in the 5, 6, or 7 of the justice or the 5, 6, or 7 of the order, the game would end immediately, and the side whose marker the royal favor was on would win the game. So if it was in the 5, 6, or 7 of the order, then the sheriff would win. If it was in 5, 6, or 7 of justice, then Robin Hood would win. If it's not in one of the shaded areas, then neither player immediately wins at this point. So then you'd move on to the mischief phase of the royal inspection. The first thing in the mischief phase is the Robin Hood player gains 1 shilling for each camp he has in a forest. In this case, he just has 1, so he would just gain 1 shilling. But if he had 1 camp here and 1 camp here, he would gain 2. There is an event card that lets you place a camp in Allerton Hill. Usually nothing can be in that space, but if you get that event card and activate that event, you could place one in Allerton Hill. So it's possible you could get one there. But anyway, first step in the mischief phase is the Robin Hood player gets 1 shilling for each camp he has in a forest. Next, the Robin Hood player can do a single rob plot, so a rob plot in 1 space, and then they can connect, and then they can do 1 donate deed in up to 2 spaces. And we've already talked about what the rob plot, how the rob plot works, and how the donate deed works. So again, in the mischief phase at this point, Robin Hood can do 1 rob plot in 1 space and a donate deed in 2 spaces. Then Robin Hood can remove up to half of his men in prison rounded down. So if he only had 1, he'd have to leave it. But if he had 2 in there, he could remove 1. And that goes back to his available forces. So remove half of his men, including Robin Hood if he was in there, from prison, rounded down, and those go back to his available forces. And that ends the mischief step of the royal inspection. So then you'd move on to the governance. The first thing in the governance step is that the sheriff player gets 1 shilling for each submissive parish, including Nottingham. So in this case, he would get 4 shillings. Next, he has to remove half the number of henchmen that he has in revolting parishes rounded down. So in this case, Remston, he would have to remove 1 of his henchmen, and those go back to available forces. Even though he's got 1 in Mansfield, half rounded down, we would still leave 1, so he wouldn't have to remove 1 there, nor in Blythe. Then you would set any revolting parishes where the number of henchmen at this point outnumber the number of merrymen. You would set them back to submissive. In the state that I have the board now, none of them would get flipped back to submissive because there's more merrymen here, more merrymen here, an equal number here, and an equal number here. So they only get set back to submissive at this point if there is more henchmen than merrymen there. All right, well, that ends the governance step. Then you move on to the redeployment step of the royal inspection. First thing that happens in the redeployment step is that the sheriff must move any henchmen he has in revolting parishes to submissive parishes. So in this case, he would need to move these henchmen, to any submissive parishes that he has. He can choose which ones he wants to put them, but he has to move all henchmen in revolting parishes to submissive parishes. And he also has to do the same if he has any henchmen in forests. He has to move them out of the forest and move them to submissive parishes. He can then move any other henchmen that he wants to Nottingham. So any henchmen that he already had in submissive parishes, he could move them to Nottingham if he wanted to. Then any carriages that are in the used carriages box go back to the available carriages for the sheriff player. Next, all merrymen that are on the map are flipped to their hidden side. That includes Robin Hood. Then any merrymen that are in submissive parishes must be moved to either a forest, or if there was a parish with a camp, they could be moved to the parish with a camp, even if it was a submissive parish. Any other merrymen on the board at this point can either be moved to a forest, or they can stay where they are, or they can be moved to a parish with a camp, whatever the Robin Hood player wants to do at that point. Then, if the Robin Hood piece was in the available forces, it's placed in any forest space as hidden. Then, the Robin Hood player can secretly, tell the sheriff to look away, and he can swap his Robin Hood piece with any other merryman piece on the map. Now, of course, if Robin Hood is in prison, he just stays in prison. He can't get placed back in the woods, and he can't get swapped with any other piece on the map. But if he was already on the map, or if you moved him from the available forces to the forest, then he can at this point be secretly swapped with any other merryman piece on the map. That finishes the redeployment phase, and finally you move to the reset phase or step. I think the rule book actually calls these phases. I've been saying steps, but I think the rule book refers to them as phases, so we'll just say then you move on to the reset phase. First thing in the reset phase, you would shuffle any travelers in the discard pile back into the traveler deck, not any that are in the victims pile, just those that are in the discard pile. You'll shuffle them back into the traveler's deck. Then, even if the Robin Hood player was currently on the second eligible space, you would move Robin Hood to the first eligible and the sheriff's piece to the second eligible. That would end the royal inspection round, and you would then reveal another event card and continue playing as I've been showing. You'll eventually get to one more royal inspection round, and so you'll do another royal inspection round, which may end the game immediately after an unrest phase, or otherwise you'll keep going till finally you get to the last card in the deck, which is the King's Richard Return, and you'll immediately conduct an unrest phase of a royal inspection round and then determine the victor. At that point, whoever's got the marker on their side of the, even if it's not in one of the darker spots, Whoever has the royal favor marker on their side of the royal favor track is the victor. So that pretty much covers how to play a Gest of Robin Hood. I will set everything back up to how it was right after setup, and we'll go through a few example turns. Alright, I believe I've got the board set back up to how it should be at the beginning of the game. And we'll get started with a few example turns. First thing we do is flip an event card. There's one carriage. Of course, since it's the first turn of the game, the sheriff hasn't put any carriages on the board yet, so no carriage would be moved. Alright, now the Robin Hood player is first eligible, so they'll see what they want to do. So we'll have Robin Hood, he's going to do plots and deeds, so he gets to do one plot in up to 3 spaces and then one deed. So I'm going to have him do the recruit. So it costs 1 shilling per space, so we'll pay 1 shilling. And remember, if we have a space with a camp, we can place 2 merrymen there. So we'll take these 2 merrymen, put them face down, maybe, and place them in this forest with a camp. Alright, we can recruit in 2 more non-submissive spaces. So I think I'll pay another shilling, and I can recruit 1 man here in Remston, since it's non-submissive. And I'll pay 1 more shilling. Now I'm already getting low on money. And I will recruit 1 merry man here in Southwell Forest. Alright, that is my plot. Now I need to do 1 deed. I think I'll do Swashbuckle, where I get to move Robin Hood and up to 1 merryman to any adjacent space and then hide them. Of course, all of my merrymen are hidden right now. It costs 0 shillings, so I'm going to move my Robin Hood piece, and you can tell the sheriff to look away while you're figuring out which one is your Robin Hood piece, but I knew which one it was. And up to 1 merryman to an adjacent space. Now you can move them to the same adjacent space or to different adjacent spaces. I'm going to move them to the same one up here to Blythe. Okay, that's going to end the Robin Hood turn, so now it's the sheriff's turn. So they can choose event or single plot. If they do event, they can place any 2 revealed merrymen. Well, they don't have any revealed merrymen, so that's not going to do them any good, so they're going to do the single plot. I just noticed I should have 2 henchmen in Nottingham that I forgot to place when I was resetting up the board, so I'm just placing them back. Since I'm doing single plot, whichever plot I choose, I can only do it in 1 space. And I think I'll do the higher plot, and that will cost me 2 shillings. I can only do it in 1 space since I'm doing single plot, but I'm going to pay 2 shillings. And I'm going to do where I place 4 henchmen in Nottingham. So I'm going to take these 4 henchmen and place them in Nottingham. Alright, so both the Robin Hood and Sheriff player have done their turns, so now we'll reset. The leftmost is the Sheriff, so he'll be first eligible, and then the Robin Hood player will be second eligible. Alright, now we'll start the next turn by revealing the next event card. We would move 1 carriage if there was 1 on the board. There's not. Alright, so now the first eligible is the Sheriff, so he has his first choice of actions to take. So I think the Sheriff kind of likes his section here on the event, so we're going to have the Sheriff do the event, so he'll get to execute this. Reveal all merrymen in 1 space, then perform a capture there. He's going to reveal the merrymen in this space, in Blythe. So he reveals 1 merryman in Robin Hood. He then gets to perform a capture there. So if you remember a capture, he gets to remove one revealed enemy piece per henchman there. He's only got one henchman there, so he can only remove one enemy piece. Now if it was a revolting province, he'd have to have two henchmen to capture one. But it's not revolting, it's submissive, so he can capture one. But you have to do merry men first. You can only capture Robin Hood after all merry men are not there. So he can only capture this merry man, but he will, and he'll send it to prison. And that will end his action. So now the Robin Hood player can either do single plot or plots and deeds. Well, since Robin Hood's running low on cash, I think he's going to do plots and deeds again. And for his plot, he's going to do rob because that doesn't cost him anything. And he can rob in up to 3 spaces with hidden merry men or Robin Hood or Robin Hood. So I think he's going to rob a traveler in these woods. So first he'll reveal any merrymen that are going to participate. So he's going to reveal both of these. And then he will pick a traveler card. Uh-oh, it's a noble knight with 2 defense. Then we have to choose which one of these options we're going to use before we roll our dice for the rob. Since this guy's got 2 defense, it's a little bit more dangerous. I think we don't want to do this one. We'll do this one. If successful, we gain 3 shillings and then put the card in the discard pile. If we fail, the only thing that happens is we put the card in the discard pile. If we fail this one, we capture the merry men and they have to go to prison. So we don't want to do that. Alright, so we're going to choose the light shaded option. Because we're robbing in a forest, we get to roll the green die. So we got a 0, so 2 against 2. It's not greater than, so we actually fail this, but luckily all that happens is this knight is in the discard pile. Alright, we get to rob in up to 3 spaces, so with hidden merry men. So we're going to rob in this forest now. So we're going to reveal both these merry men. We're going to rob a traveler. So we'll reveal a card. They have 0 defense, so that's good. We have to choose which option we want. If we choose the easier option, we only gain 2 shillings. And we put the card in the discard pile. Nothing bad happens if we fail. This one, if we're successful, we only gain 1 shilling, but we get to place a hidden merry man in the rob space or an adjacent space. But card goes in the victim's pile, and if failed, put a henchman in the rob space, then put the card in the discard pile. Yeah, we'll do the second one. I think we'll be successful since they have 0 defense. Again, it's in a forest, so we get to roll the green die. We got a 0, so it's 2 against 0, so we're successful, so we gain 1 shilling. We gain a hidden merry man in the rob space, so we'll put him there. They could also have gone to an adjacent space, but we'll just put it in the rob space. And then put this in the victims pile, so we'll make this our victims pile up here. Alright, that's our second rob. We can do one more rob. And we'll do that here. We'll reveal both of these merry men, have them both participate in this revolting province. Since it's a revolting province, we'll still get to roll the green die. And we'll reveal, we're going to do another traveler. So we'll reveal this traveler, monks. They have 0 defense. And I think we'll do the harder one again this time. Since they have 0 defense, of course it does put another card in the victim's pile. Alright, since we're robbing in a revolting parish, we still get to roll the green die. We got a -1, so our score is 1, but still against 0, so we're still successful. So we gain 3 shillings. 1, 2, 3. And then we put the card in the victim's pile. And that's all 3 of our rob attempts. Now, we have a lot of our merry men revealed, which makes them vulnerable to capture. But that's going to end that turn, so now we'll reset again because the sheriff was leftmost. He'll be first eligible. Oh, we forgot Robin Hood also gets to do a deed. I think we'll do the donate deed. So 2 shillings per parish, and up to 2 submissive parishes with merry men equal to or greater than henchmen. Set the parish to revolting. So we do have the parish of Blythe, where we have Robin Hood, who counts as a merry man, and it is equal to the number of henchmen. So we can donate 2 shillings and set this parish to revolting. And I think that's the only one we can do it in, so we'll just do it in the one parish. Alright, now that ends our deed. So now we reset these, which I've already moved the sheriffs here, and Robin Hood will be second eligible. Alright, so now we reveal our next event card. We would move 2 carriages if there were any on the board. And this one is actually a fortune card. So it says the sheriff may return any number of henchmen to available to gain 1 shilling per henchman returned, up to the number of submissive parishes. Well, I don't think he wants to return any of his henchmen to available, so he's not going to do that. Then the Robin Hood player may return 1 merry man to available to gain half that number of shillings rounded down. So I had to look this up because it didn't really make sense to me, but what it means is if the sheriff removed henchmen, like 3 henchmen to gain 3 shillings, then Robin Hood could remove 1 merry man to gain half the amount that the sheriff gained rounded down. So if the sheriff gained 3 shillings, then Robin could remove 1 merry man to available to gain half that amount, 3 rounded down, so to gain 1. So since the sheriff didn't do any, then Robin Hood's not going to gain anything. So that's the fortune, and that's all that happens. You would have moved carriages if there were some to move, then you do the fortune, and now we go ahead and flip the next event card. No turns are taken on a fortune. Again, we would move 1 carriage if there was some. And now this isn't a fortune card, so now the sheriff player will decide what action they want to take. I think the sheriff's going to do plots and deeds, so he gets to do 1 plot and 1 deed. He's going to do patrol, cost 2 shillings per destination. He can do it in up to 3 destinations. So he can choose up to 3 destination spaces and move any number of henchmen from adjacent spaces there, and then reveal merry men in that space. Most of the merry men are revealed, but he does want to start dispersing. So he'll choose this one as a destination space, and he'll move 1 merry man there. He'll choose Southwell Forest as a destination space, and he's going to move 3 henchmen there, and he's going to choose Shirewood as a destination space, and he's going to move 2 henchmen there. So that's 3 destination spaces at 2 shillings per space. That's going to cost him 3 4 5 6. Oh, he's almost out of money. And he does get to reveal henchmen or merry men. In a forest, he gets to reveal 1 per 2 henchmen there. He's got 3 there, so he does get to reveal this merry man. There isn't any there. These are already revealed. But that's going to be his plot, so now he gets to do 1 deed. Since he is about out of money, he's going to do the confiscate deed so he can get some carriages. So it doesn't cost him anything, and in up to 2 submissive parishes with henchmen, he can place a carriage in the parish, then set the parish to revolting. So he does have a submissive parish with henchmen here, so he's going to choose one of his carriages. Now, does he want to try to get one with a lot of money, or does he want to try to get one that's going to capture merry men, or one that's going to get him, you know, some shift towards justice like this one. I think he's going to put this one. Again, he does it secretly, so he's going to put that one there. And then he's going to choose one to try to get a bunch of shillings, and he will put this one here, and he has to flip it to submissive. Alright, that is his deed, so his turn is done. Alright, it's the Robin Hood player's turn. They can do single plot or event. I think they're going to do event, so they'll move their marker to event. And for them, the light shaded area is perform a free single sneak. Normally a sneak is one single per origin, so I get to perform a free single sneak, so sneak from one origin area, and then rob in up to 3 spaces, adding 1 to the result of each rob roll. So let's do our sneak first. So we'll make this our origin area, the Southwell Forest. So we get to move any merry men to adjacent spaces. If the destination space is submissive and moving the merry men plus any henchmen there exceeds 3, then we have to reveal them. Otherwise, all the moving merry men are hidden. So we're going to move these 2 guys here into Bingham. The moving merry men plus 1 henchman is 3. That doesn't exceed 3, so we don't have to reveal them. Alright, so that's our sneak. Now we get to rob in up to 3 spaces, adding 1 to the result of our rob roll. So we'll rob in Bingham. We'll try to rob this carriage, so we'll reveal both of these guys, both of these merry men. Oops. Come on, reveal them. Okay. We're trying to rob the carriage, so we'll reveal that. We know it's a tribute carriage. We have to roll the white die because we're in a submissive parish, so we'll get our white die. And remember, we get to add 1 because of our event. We get to add 1 to our roll. So we add 1, so 2 plus the 1 is 3 against the defense. This has no base defense, but the 1 henchman is 1. So our 3 against 1, we're successful in robbing that, so we get 2 shillings. Those come from the supply. And then this carriage goes to the used carriages spot. And because that was a tribute carriage, we shift 1 towards justice for successfully robbing that. Now our event says we get to rob in up to 3 spaces. We can't rob it anywhere else we have merry men because they're all revealed, but you can rob with Robin Hood even if he is revealed. So I think we're going to try to rob a traveler here in Blythe. Because it's a revolting parish, we'll get to roll the green die. So we're going to try to rob a traveler, so we'll reveal it. Uh-oh, another noble knight. Since he's got a base defense of 2, plus the 1 henchman in there is 3, I'm going to have to roll I'm going to have to roll the plus 3. So not good odds, so I'm going to go with the lighter shaded option. If successful, gain 3 shillings and put the card in the discard pile. If failed, just put the card in the discard pile. So we'll roll our die. Oh, we got a plus 3, so we're successful. So we gain 3 shillings. And we put the card in the discard pile, which is where it already is. And remember, we were allowed to rob with Robin Hood, even though he's already revealed, because I guess that's one of his abilities. All the other merry men, they have to be hidden, and then you reveal them to rob with them. So, all right, that's going to be our event. So now we'll reset. Robin Hood will go to the first eligible, and Sheriff will go to the second eligible. And now we will reveal another event card. The Sheriff has to move 1 carriage. He's only got 1 carriage. It's got to move along the path, so it will go here to the Shire Wood. I think the Robin Hood player is going to do plots and deeds, and for his plot he's going to do sneak, and he can do it in up to 3 origin spaces with Merryman at 1 shilling per origin area. So we'll choose the Shire Wood as 1 origin area, and we will move these guys here to Blythe, and because it's not submissive, we can just go ahead and move them to hidden. If it was submissive, then because the number moving plus the number of henchmen, well, that still wouldn't have exceeded 3, so we still would have been able to hide them. So we'll owe 1 shilling for that, but we're going to do 2 more origin areas. We're going to move these 2 guys to Mansfield. Again, it's not submissive, so we can go ahead and move them to hidden. So that's 2 origin areas I've done, so I'll owe 2 shillings. I can do 1 more origin area. We'll go ahead and do this guy into Tuxford. It is submissive, but the number of merrymen plus there's no henchmen there, so it's not greater than 3, so he gets to move. Now we do owe 3 shillings since we did 3 origin areas. And now we still get to do a deed. I think we're going to do turncoat, so we choose 1 revolting parish with a merryman. We're going to choose Mansfield here, and we get to replace 1 henchman with a merryman. So we will replace one of the sheriff's henchmen with a merryman. This guy will just go back to the sheriff's available forces. That does cost us 1 shilling. And now we're done with Robin Hood's turn. Alright, Sheriff's turn. He really doesn't have but 1 shilling, so he can't do either of these plots. So I think he's going to do single plot, and he's going to do capture. We can do it in up to 1 space since we're doing it from the single plot. He can remove 1 revealed enemy piece per henchman, or 2 henchmen in a revolting parish. So here's a couple of revealed henchmen here. He's got 1, or revealed merrymen here. He's got 1 henchman. So he will capture 1 of those and place it in the prison. And that is going to be his turn. So we'll put these back like so. And we will reveal the next card, which is going to advance carriage. It's going to advance it into Nottingham now. So we reveal it. That's going to give the sheriff 5 shillings. And he needed that. And that's going to advance the marker 1 step toward order. Now this will go to the used carriages box. And the sheriff gets to go first. I think he's going to do this event. So he's going to choose event. Set a revolting parish with a revealed merryman to submissive. He has a revolting parish with Robin Hood, which is a revealed merryman, so he's going to set that to submissive. Alright, that's going to be his turn. Alright, I think Robin Hood's going to do plots and deeds. For his plot, he's going to do sneak, so he gets to do it from 3 origin areas. So he gets to move merrymen to adjacent spaces. He's going to move Robin Hood over here to Tuxford, and he'll get to hide him. And then he would probably tell the sheriff to look away while he mixed up this other merryman that's in Tuxford with Robin Hood, so the sheriff wouldn't know which one he is. Alright, that's going to cost him 1 shilling, but he's also going to move this merryman here and hide him, so that's going to cost another shilling. So he'll pay 2 shillings. Now he gets to do a deed. I think he'll do inspire, so 1 parish with Robin Hood. He'll reveal Robin Hood to set the parish to revolting. So he's going to do that. So he's going to reveal Robin Hood here in Tuxford to set it to revolting. Alright, that's going to end that turn. Sheriff goes to first eligible. Robin Hood goes to second eligible. We reveal the next card. And I think I'm going to do this turn off camera. And then the next one should be our Royal Inspection card. So I'll come back and show that, but I'm going to go ahead and do this turn off camera just to speed things up. Alright, I finished that turn off camera. Now we'll reveal the Royal Inspection card and go through the phases there. So first we have the unrest phase. Alright, so in the unrest phase we count the submissive parishes. We've got 4. With 4 submissive parishes we move one step toward justice. We then check if the marker is in the shaded space of either side for an immediate victory. It obviously is not, so we move on to the mischief phase. Robin Hood gains 1 shilling for each camp in a forest. He's got 1, so he gains 1 shilling. So we'll get that. The sheriff should have captured that. I wasn't paying attention to that. The sheriff could have captured that and shifted 1 step toward order. Then Robin Hood can conduct a single rob plot. So I think he'll do that here. He'll rob a traveler here in Tuxford. He'll reveal this merry man plus Robin Hood. So they're going to reveal this traveler. It's a rich merchant. They'll just do the light shaded. He has a defensive 1 because it's in a revolting parish. I get to roll a green die. We got a 0, but anyway, that's 2 against a defensive 1. There's no henchman in there, so we're successful. So we gain 2 shillings. And this card will stay here in the discard pile. So that's it for our rob. Then the Robin Hood player has the opportunity to donate in submissive parishes where he's got merry men equal to or greater than henchmen. I don't think he's got that in any submissive parish, so he can't really do a donate, so we'll skip that. And then we return half the merry men in prison rounded down to available forces, so that's going to be 1, and that's going to end the mischief phase, and we'll go on to the governance. The sheriff gains 1 shilling for each submissive space plus Nottingham, so that's going to be a total of 5. So there's that money. He needed that. We then have to remove half the henchmen in revolting provinces to available forces. So we'll have to take this one from here. Half rounded down, so that one, and there's not one in there. So I think those are the only henchmen that have to be removed. Then in any province, revolting province, where the henchmen outnumber merry men, we would set it back to submissive, but I don't think we have that case in any of our revolting provinces. And I keep saying provinces, it's parishes, but that ends the governance phase, and now we move to the redeployment phase. The sheriff must move his men in revolting parishes and forests to submissive spaces. So he lost his opportunity to put a couple up here. We will put a couple here. And yeah, lost my opportunity to remove that camp. That was crazy that I didn't do that. I'll put one there. Alright. And then could move any of the other henchmen to Nottingham, but I'm fine with the 2 that I have in Nottingham. Next, all the merry men get flipped to hidden. What did I do with that one? Okay, I think they're all flipped to hidden. Then merry men in submissive parishes need to be moved to a forest or a parish with a camp. So that's just these two, and we'll move them to Shire Wood. And I think that's the only place we have merry men and submissive parishes. Any other merry men can stay where they are or be moved to a parish with a camp. I think I'll move one merry man to this forest. All right. Then if the Robin Hood piece was in available forces, it could be moved to a forest, but it's not. It's already on the map. And if the Robin Hood piece was in prison, it could be swapped with any other merry man on the map, but it's not. So we're done with the redeployment phase. Now we go to the reset phase, where we would now shuffle these discarded travelers back into the traveler deck. We would reset. If Robin Hood wasn't already in the first eligible, he would get shifted over to the first eligible, but he already is. And that's it. And then we would flip the next card and start the next turn. But I'm going to wrap it up. This video's gone on way longer than I originally intended. So you can see how the game works. Really, with all the instructions on the plots and deeds and everything that's on the player screen, you really don't have to review you really don't have to turn to the rules very often or refer to the rules very often, because pretty much everything is right here at your fingertips. I like that. Having only played the game once and just playing it by myself to learn the rules, I can't really give any idea on good strategy. Obviously, I didn't have very good strategy when I didn't capture that camp to shift one step toward order for the sheriff. And I can't really give an opinion on, what I think of the game until I've actually played it with another player. I think it might be fun, but having just played it once, I don't want to say too much about that. I just wanted to show how it played, and then you can make your own opinion. But I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.